All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Discuss Foundation. This week we are covering episode 8 of season 1, titled, is it The Missing Piece?
Yes, it's The Missing Piece,
The
directed
Missing
by
Piece.
Roxanne Dawson and written by Sarah Nolan.
Fantastic. As always, I am Nick, and this is my co-host, Brian.
What's
Um,
up?
for the podcast here, we're going to go through a general overview of our thoughts on the episode and how we liked it, if it hit us a certain way. And then we're going to go into a scene-by-scene recap, a little more in-depth breakdown of our thoughts on the episode. And then lastly, we should be able to hit some predictions as to where we think the show is going to go moving forward. Before I kick it over to Brian here, we're going to give a quick disclaimer, which is me and Brian have not read the book, so we're not coming versed on Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, the book series, and we don't really know how anything in the show relates to the books and vice versa. If you guys are looking for something a little more that speed, there are a couple other podcasts that kind of tackle that kind of subject matter, but it's not going to be here. We're just kind of fans of the show. If you are listening on our podcast platforms, we are available on all the major podcasting platforms. Make sure to do anything you can to support the show, whether that be liking it, sharing it, giving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you guys happen to be watching the video on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the video as well. And with that all of the way, Brian, what do you think of season 1, episode 8, The Missing Piece?
Um, I thought this was the missing piece for a lot of stuff that we've been talking about. This is by far one of my favorite episodes. It hit everything I wanted it to hit. It did everything I wanted it to do. It it was a really good episode. It jam-packed a lot of information, a lot of visuals, a lot of really cool stuff, and it did it perfectly. Like, I thought it was very well done. So yeah, best my favorite episode so far.
Awesome. It's weird because this is like a flip from last week, because last week I was like, this is for sure my favorite episode, and you were a little
Yeah.
more lukewarm on it. This one was, like I said, I was a little lukewarm on this one. I didn't hate it, but there was nothing that really grabbed me in the episode per se. I had a lot of issues with maybe some character motivation stuff as well. Yeah, this one, I don't know, it didn't feel as consequential and big as the last one did for me. But I didn't necessarily dislike this one. I just thought I thought after the last one, I was kind of on a high, and it kind of just mellowed me down a
Yeah.
little bit again. We're going to go ahead and kick into a recap of the episode here. So initially, it looks like we start on Anacreon, I want to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, we start on Anacreon and we see
Mm-hmm.
two young children frolicking in the woods.
Frolicking
And
is a good word, yeah.
yeah, then we assume they're brother and sister,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just running, playing, frolicking. And the sister turns around as she sees the sky starts lighting up with the ships from the jump ships or warships from Trantor, and she sees her village family, everyone get annihilated.
Yeah, and she's like really close to it, and she seems she gets away pretty decently from that blast, at
Yeah.
least, that comes through. But um this was a cool scene to start with, I guess, to kind of see that perspective and see that point of view from Farah. I get kind of why they did it. There's one thing that kind of was like an annoying thing for me, which is they state in the scene, they put Anacreon in big letters. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, like, did they need to do that? Like, I remember thinking, like, they could have
Well,
showed the scene as is with the kids playing and stuff, and you would have been like, wait, where are we? And it would have like raised questions like, what are we seeing? What are we
and
seeing
then
here?
cut to
And then
just
cut to Farah
Farah.
talking, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, it was her on an act. You know what I mean? I feel like it's
This
like little stuff like that kind of gets me, where I'm just like, did you really need to write that there? Because we would have figured it out, and it probably would have made it a little more
yeah.
suspenseful, you know?
This scene should have been included earlier when Salvor started doing the reading into her, like, her mind and like premonitions and the thought. This would
Mm-hmm.
have been perfect for her to do that and just kind of like interrogation and see the pain and suffering. I thought it would have hit harder when if it was back then. Here we just
Right.
get kind of like sets up like, okay, she has a motivation to be doing this type of stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I agree. I think if we would have seen like little pieces of it, like little flashes of it when she was interrogating her, and then we got this scene to kind of flesh it out, that would have kind of
Yeah.
been a little more impactful too.
Oh yeah.
And but I don't wanna like backseat quarter, what is it, like
Yeah.
Monday morning quarterback the show of like, oh, this is how I would have done it. But I just
No, no,
thought,
I
I saw that
yeah.
and I was like, it seems like extra information that probably could have made the scene better if they took it out. Farah is kind of telling Salvor her plan and kind of why she's doing what she's doing, which is a little vague for me as far as like it seems like Salvor's making good points. Like I mean I get that there's characters that are kind of driven by vengeance, but Trantor blew up your entire people based on the mistakes of a few people, and you're planning on doing the exact same thing to I'm sorry, yeah, to Trantor back where there's kids and all that kind of stuff on there, and she's just like. And I felt like her justification for it was just like, yeah, but revenge, you know. And
Yeah, it's
I didn't
just
like, I don't know, it didn't feel like emotionally rooted for me really that much. So it goes to Galen Harry on the Raven ship. She starts telling him, I guess she's trying to come to grips with what she just figured out, which that she can see the future, which I guess it was
yeah,
just a realization that she had or something. She says that a dream of water, like a huge wave crashing on her and swallowing her whole city, is
yeah,
what kind of drove her to teach herself math. And Harry says something I had been harking on for the past couple weeks too, which was it seems that maybe she has a subconscious. This is what Harry thinks too. It seems like she has a subconscious ability to keep her ahead of the math. I think he says you
yeah,
have an intuitive processing ability that puts you ahead of the math, which is kind of what I said before, is that maybe she's so smart and such a genius mathematician that like she's able to intuit the
yeah.
psychohistory before,
It's
more
more,
specifically.
yeah, it's more intuition than anything else. She's not. She had her mind it naturally developed into being able to analyze psychohistory at a rate that almost becomes fortune telling. Like she can almost predict the future.
Right, right. And it seems like that's what Harry thinks it is, and that's what I would technically kind of think it is, but it seems like
Yeah,
Gail maybe thinks it's something more religious or mystical, or she's got some kind of power. I use power in like air quotes as like she's got, which I mean it is, but I think she
yeah.
thinks it's like some kind of genetic trait or something. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of got that gist there. What did you think about the scene with her and Harry in the Raven ship?
The stakes were high, like kind of like really high stakes, but at the same time they weren't. They had to set up a conflict, and I just didn't like how. I don't know. It could have been done quicker. Like I think this is the scene where Harry reveals his true intention, or not yet.
Harry reveals what?
The plan of why Harry needed Raish and why they were going back to Halcyon.
I don't think he ever reveals that unless I'm mistaken, right? He makes her like leave the ship because he doesn't reveal it, right?
No, he says it. It's he's starting a second.
Oh, the second foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah, he does say he's starting a second foundation because and that the first one would be targeted, so they needed like a secret one that none, even people on the first foundation, knew about that they were
yeah,
going to set up on Helicon, Stars End, I think, which is on Helicon, which is I guess where the second foundation is going to be or take place. But yeah, we found out that there is a second foundation.
yeah,
I agree with you too. I felt like the conflict felt forced, or it felt like kind of out of nowhere. I remember
yeah,
thinking, kind of Gail's been kind of an annoying character for me to, or at least a harder character for me to like latch onto because her motivation seems so weird to me. Like
yeah,
she just found out, through Harry, with Harry talking her through it, that she's able to like see the future, and she immediately goes from that to like, I want to get away from Harry as fast as possible and go I don't know where. Like I guess she just wants to leave the ship
no,
and
she
get
wants to
off
go
the
back home
yeah, she wants to go back home.
to Synax.
Right. I don't understand the motivation for that at all, and I
Yeah,
don't understand like her all of a sudden kind of turning, not turning on Harry. I understand that she doesn't trust him because he faked his death and all that kind of stuff. But their conflict germinates here, and I feel like it didn't make much sense to me. I remember thinking like,
yeah,
why is she so upset? Why is she so frustrated right now? Like, I don't
yeah,
understand where she's
and
coming from.
for someone so logical that she is, because she always uses logic. She's like, oh, logic, logic, logic. All of a sudden, she takes this huge emotional thing where, like, why are you out of nowhere becoming emotional? She's always used logic all up until this point, then all of a sudden, she just throws it out the window, and it makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's something that we've touched on in previous episodes too. I remember when the Raven ship happened. Remember when she
Yeah,
immediately finds out Raish is dead or Raish dies, and then she went in the bathroom to like kill herself, and I was just like,
yeah,
whoa, like what is going on? I almost wish the writers would address it and say like maybe she's got some kind of like mental thing or like some kind of manic
yeah,
personality thing because her actions seem to signal that. They seem to signal somebody that's like that goes on these really wild emotional tangents.
yeah,
And maybe if they wrote that into the script, I could buy it a little more. But as it stands right now, it just feels like the writing is just kind of taking her in places that seem unnatural.
yeah, and you really touch upon it for something that happens later on in the episode. It really hammers home that point.
So it cuts from there to go figure.
What
We
we
called it,
called.
yeah, we called it last week. Hugo is still kicking. They to the show's credit, they didn't make it like some big reveal. Like I think everyone kind of knew he wasn't dead. They just kind of show him, you know. And I kind of like that they did that. They didn't make it like they didn't like make you suspenseful. Like, oh, is Hugo still alive? It's like he's obviously still alive.
Yeah.
So they just kind of show it. He goes. Apparently, he floated to one of those mining
Yeah, the
mining,
communication.
yeah, to try to
Yeah.
find a communications relay to get in touch with some more
Yep.
thespians, I think, is how you pronounce it. And
Dustbins.
he kind of sends out a message, but there's nothing. We get nothing back in that scene, so we don't really know if any of it worked or any of it
Yeah.
came through to anybody. It's a real quick scene there,
Yep.
and then after that, it's back to the maiden. Is this the Brother Day storyline after this one?
Uh,
Um,
I believe yes, it is. It
yeah.
starts the journey.
So on the maiden, we're thrown right into Brother Day, and he is attempting the spiral, which for those of you that aren't aware, the
Mhm.
spiral is that big kind of religious pilgrimage that Luminists take. I think once in their life, they do it like once some point
Yeah,
throughout their life.
they save up all their money to do this trip, and it's you either die or you live.
Did anything jump out to you about this scene with him walking like Lee Pace, aside from the fact that his shirt was off for a lot of it?
What I liked about it was like you saw how much tech he had inside of him, like how much he had protecting him. He
Mm-hmm.
had the nanobots, the shields, like so many different unique things, and seeing him lose it all and become mortal was really eye-watering. I mean, outside of him like walking around without a shirt, that was like, whoo boy. But
Yeah.
the rules, the things, and like how everyone set it up, and you see him kind of come to terms with, like, I will be touched. There's nothing I could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it it was good. I really liked how they made him mortal. They turned a god mortal.
Yeah, I think that's a really good characterization for it too, because it's like it does remind me. It reminds me of like someone coming down from Olympus and making themselves mortal and taking away kind of their divine powers, to kind of kick it with the humans for a while or
Yeah.
whatever. But that's kind of what it felt like. He very much is kind of the closest thing you get to a god in that universe, and he's going to do this very humbling trek across the Maiden. You touched on the nanobots too.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird because when Brother Dawn in the previous episode was talking about, oh no, they're gonna track me down with my nanobots, and she said, oh, you can filter them out. He made it sound like it was this really hard thing, but like in this episode, he's just kind of
Yeah,
like, yeah, your nanobots are gone, you're cool. And I remember thinking like, oh, that was really fast and easy. Like I guess you could just kind of take nanobots out pretty quickly. Maybe if you have the resources that they have,
yeah,
possibly, but he removes his bracelet, so he doesn't have a shield and anything. He's really stripped down to
yeah,
nothing but like some shorts and like a shawl, pretty much,
yeah,
and makes the trek.
and the salt crystal.
And the salt crystal, correct? Yeah. So he does take a salt crystal from Demerzel. It seems to be a very personal item for them. I can't remember if in past episodes did they talk about her salt crystal at all. Is this something that's come back and I just missed it?
I I don't know. This is the first time I've been I've known about the salt crystal.
Yeah, I feel like they've shown her like fiddling with it or something. Like she has some kind of maybe emotional attachment to it. It was on her bracelet. And I don't know
Yeah,
what it's from necessarily. I think if I had to guess, and like I said, we may have missed it. They may have elaborated on this in previous episodes and we might have missed it. So let us know in the comments if that's the case. But my guess is that she may have gotten that salt crystal when she did the spiral.
yeah,
Um, and we'll get into when that was later in the episode as well. But we she may have gotten that when she did the spiral initially and kept that as like a token, and he took it as like a good luck charm. The
yeah,
other thing I noticed in the scene is that Demerzel does feel very. She looks like she's extremely scared for him. Like she's very very worried about him in the scene, and
yeah,
she's telling him like this isn't a joke. Like she seems very worried, which makes sense because she's kind of a maternal character in their lives. Very very complicated relationship, which we'll get into later
well,
in the episode as
I
well.
I think she's worried not because of his health, because the doctor kind of says, yeah, he's in perfect health to do this. He could do this with no problems. I think she's afraid of what happens, because when he interrogates her, like, what do you expect? And he starts telling her about the vision. I think she's afraid that something's going to happen that he's not going to see something. He's not going to experience it
Hmm.
and the ramifications of it. So I think she's just worried about what will happen when he completes the journey.
Yeah. So he goes on this trek. He goes on this trek, or he starts the trek at least. They talk about pretty much how daunting this is, and that only, or say, I think they say less than half of people make it, which is pretty crazy. Like of all the Luminous that attempt it, like over 50% of them die on the way there and stuff. So that seems really intense. They apparently say that you have to walk. I don't know if you got the numbers. I think they said 175 kilometers without water or food,
Yeah, I didn't write
something
it
like that.
down. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
you
long
can
time.
correct us in the comments, but it's something like that, something crazy like that, like 175 kilometers, no food or water. And apparently, at the end of the trek, there's a sacred pool called I think the Mother's Womb or something,
Yeah, it's
and
the room.
it's where you can dunk in, and there's apparently some ionized salts or ionization in the water that can trigger visions. So that's kind of
Yeah.
what they're working towards there. Um, it goes to him walking, and there's a wanderer there. One little note that I wrote down
Oh,
too was,
yeah, this
uh,
is where I started writing a lot of notes.
okay, cool. One little note that I got, and then I'll kick it over to you two, was that Cleon seemed weirdly like amicable to the Wanderer, and it was kind of a weird juxtaposition because in the last episode where
Yeah.
Proxima Halima is like tending to some people that had just done the trek, it looks like they had just like done the
Yeah,
trek. He
they
like
gave up on it.
touched his hand and like threw it away, like he was like, "Ew, peasant, get off of me!" Like he had this very kind of air of superiority to him. And in this one, he seemed like weirdly like amicable to the Wanderer and stuff around him. And it may have been like a self-preservation tactic where he's just thinking, "I'm going to be nice to this guy because he's going to save me." But I don't know.
I
It seemed a
have
little odd to me.
my note on it.
Mhm.
Him they bonded over one thing because the Wanderer said something. That was the first time I was on a ship, a jump ship. And Brother Day goes, same here. That was the first time the Brother Day was on a jump ship. And
Yeah,
I think it's because they had the kinship bond of like, I am the same as this guy. I've lived on this planet my entire life. I've worked, and me and him share the same experience. We've never been on a ship and left the world. And the first time we do it is we come to this planet.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
No,
thought that
it
was
makes sense. It is a very very bonding. It's like a bonding experience. And yeah, what you say makes kind of sense too. Because if they're it might have been like the first time he ever felt like he had something in common with a regular person. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I don't know. Maybe this kind of humbles him and makes him a better leader, or something along those lines. Maybe kind of gains some humanity from going through this and stuff. But we'll see. What other notes did you have on the scene?
One of the things that was very interesting because they go over the explanation of like the knees, like you could bend on one knee, someone could help you
Hmm.
up. But if you're on both knees, you could only crawl out, but they could help you crawl out or you die there in the path. And I thought that was very interesting. I just felt like with royalty and stuff like that, like you bending the knee and like respect. And when you're bending both knees, or sometimes it's more like you're giving your neck to be
Yeah,
executed.
yeah,
So I thought
true.
that was pretty unique perspective. Like you're bending one knee, you're paying respect. You're bending both knees, you're pretty much dead.
You're submitting. You're submitting to
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah. You show it's a sign of weakness. Where I think one knee is usually a sign of fealty, like you say, like when you bend the knee for somebody. Yeah, no, I didn't put that together, but that makes a lot of sense too. That there's a lot of parallels between those. Yeah, so it goes from that scene. We go back to Gale and Harry. Again, I was just kind of questioning like why Gale is so upset and it's kind of so freaky. It just seemed like it went from 0 to 100 really fast,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking I just don't understand her perspective per se. So that's kind of what I got out of here. What did you think of the of that scene? The I know you had said the conflict felt a little forced, but what did you think of that scene overall?
I agree with you. It's the same fight that we saw the first time they're on
Mm-hmm.
screen. It's Harry's telling Gale, I'm right, you're wrong. Gale's using some weird logic that we don't know what it is. We don't know why she's going off of what
Yeah.
she's going off of. So we're just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll figure it out down the road. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, to the point where like it wasn't even just that, but then she starts to go to like pry the door open, a door that she's smart enough to know that she can't pry open. And I just remember
Yeah.
thinking like it again. It seemed like an overly like overly emotional response where I'm just kind of wondering like I almost wish that even if they didn't intend it, the writers in future episodes would just be like, yeah, she has some kind of manic like personality thing, because
Yeah. Just
that would kind of click for me if that was the case. If she was struggling with some kind of mental disability while having this um this kind of otherworldly mathematical prowess or whatever, that would make kind of sense to me. But without that there, this I don't know. It just seems like we're supposed to buy why she's this upset over something, and kind of where her thought process is, and I just couldn't kind of parse it. So it goes. I think we kick back to the maiden after that. Is that right?
yep. We're back to the maiden, and
So this is where Brother Day has a pretty close encounter with seeing the other Brother Day come out of the little
yep.
box, you know, or what is it? The room, I guess.
Yeah, the test
The
tube.
the little test tank. So Brother Day almost dies. He kind of like stumbles. His vision's kind of blurry, and he drops to one knee. But as
Yep.
Brian said earlier, one knee is okay. It's if a two hit that it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
As he goes to one knee, the man he was talking to earlier that bonded with him comes and helps him up. Um, this was a fine scene. I think like you said, it was interesting seeing such a kind of royal divine being struggle so much and then be helped up by a common man. And you know, you just want nothing but to hope that this maybe changes his perception on things or his perspective on
Yeah.
things a little bit, or maybe gives him some life experience that he can hopefully govern better in the future about the people that he's governing. But
Yeah.
yeah, the guy helps him up, and he keeps walking. Um, and that was pretty much the scene. Did you
Yes, it was.
get anything else from that, or that was pretty much it?
That was it. You nailed it.
Okay, cool.
He yeah, he took help from the Wanderer, and he's becoming more of a humble man. So moving
Yeah.
on.
So we go over to what is it? Invictus. Invictus. We are
Yes.
on Invictus here. Salvor keeps like trying to talk sense to Rowan. A kind of conversation that
Yeah.
we've seen numerous times since they've been taken hostage. She's kind of working on Rowan like he's gonna all of a sudden change his mind in the ninth inning here.
Yeah.
So I
You never
kind of
know. He
find
might give up the save.
yeah. I kind of I don't know. I grow kind of tired of that aspect just because it feels like this isn't really going anywhere. I don't know if they're planning on paying that off like later in the season where he makes some kind of big change, but I don't see where the logic would come from. She's not saying anything he hasn't already taken into consideration doing this in the first place, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, so it comes off a little melodramatic to me.
It
So
does.
he comes, so she's talking to him. She's disabling the shields, I think. And then is this the scene where they come across the turret?
Yeah. To
Okay.
get to the bridge.
So I forget they literally didn't show the character that died, but I guarantee she was somebody
It's
from a previous
it
episode.
was yeah, it was the Asian girl.
Okay. So yeah, she gets shot pretty unceremoniously. She doesn't really have a scene or anything. She just kind of gets shot. And then
Yeah.
the other ones hunker down. They find that there's a turret at the end of like a self defense turret that's shooting anything that moves pretty much. Salvor has to kind of skip through the hallway to kind of draw its fire while Farah
Yeah.
hits it with a bow, an
Yeah. And
explosive bow and arrow, I guess.
yeah, and what was unique about this? Like this was I thought it was really cool foreshadowing about
Hmm.
some future events. But the first thing they say and they look at it like, oh, it's a mutiny. I'm like, how'd you guys know it was a mutiny? And I'm like, oh, foreshadowing. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Hmm.
um, she opens the thing with Lewis, but then she finds a gun through the door. She grabs the gun. She
Yes.
starts shooting at them. She shoots a hole in the side of the ship, which creates a vacuum, which sucks one of the henchmen, nameless, faceless henchman or whatever, to the hole and kills him. Her and Lewis jump through the door, separating them from Farah and Rowan. And yeah, no, I mean, as far as like the turret scene, it again, it felt a little dark. It didn't feel like that
Yeah.
visually engaging. I wasn't really concerned for any of the characters in the scene. But I guess it was cool, just kind of drawing the turret and her blowing it up with the bow and arrow. It was a decent action scene. Then they show Salvor and Lewis get away, and I think does it stay here for the where they find the inside of the ship?
Yes. So a couple of things.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping Farrah got killed by the turret. Because that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I just don't like Farrah. The airlock move was smart as all hell.
Uh-huh.
And when all this was going on, I was like, why the hell is Lewis still alive? Like, I can't stand this guy.
I know.
He's a weaselly little prick. And then I'm like, nope, never mind. He explains what the ship is, how it works.
Right, right.
And
And
it's yeah,
oh, go
go for it.
ahead. I was
No,
gonna
no,
say I agree with you, and like I'm gonna have some criticisms about that later in the show because I agree with you about the Lewis thing. I was just kind of like why isn't he going? Like I don't know, I don't like this
yeah,
character at all, and I don't think anybody I don't think there's a universe where anybody watching this show likes Lewis. Like I don't think that anyone he's been shown to be is contrarian and inept, and he doesn't know anything that's going on, and he's constantly standing in the way of like
yeah.
the actual smart move to do. He's just been that the whole show. So it's like why is he still around? Did you have any more stuff on this scene? I think they go in and they see. One of my notes was that they see in the middle of like the I guess this is like the central console of the main room in the
Yeah.
Invictus. It says EXO written in blood,
Yep.
and that's kind of an Easter egg, right? Because it could mean, like he said, it could mean executive officer, like a number two in command, or she said it
Yeah.
could mean extraterrestrial, like something out from another place. I guess is what
Yep.
EXO would mean. What do you have? I guess maybe you want to save this for predictions as far as what we think the EXO means.
Yeah, we can save it for predictions.
Okay. So we stay. I think this was a pretty long segment, right? So
Very long.
there's these little like Tron cycle looking
Yeah.
things.
I was like Tron pods.
Yeah, these little Tron pods around the room that apparently are used to kind of control the different driving of the Invictus.
Yeah.
I did like the little production design element where there's three of them because the Invictus is such a giant ship that you feel like one pilot would be weird if it was just one pilot. It feels like it
Yeah.
would need to be like a concert or a symphony of people driving this thing. So I did like that they had multiple ones of that.
What was really unique was they explained like tech from 700 years ago, like how it worked, how it functions, how it moved on with the navigation. And I thought that was
Hmm.
really unique that like, yeah, we used to turn humans into computers to run the navigation system.
True, yeah, no, that was really cool. And also it brought up something too, which I found really interesting, which is the fact that that exists means that the whole spacers thing, we've seen spacers a couple times in the show, and they kind of seem like, kind of background characters for the most part, but
Yeah.
apparently spacers are relatively new because they said like this was before spacers that they had to have humans kind of like operate these ships.
Yeah.
So I guess the concept of spacers and stuff is a relatively new, like on the scale of on kind of the scale of the civilization there. It's a relatively new concept, which I thought was interesting too, because they seem like they would have been around for ages. He says something that I found kind of weird. So she says he's talking to her about how the person can fold space, I guess.
Yeah.
And he says folding space is as much intuition as science. I don't, maybe you can parse this out for me. I didn't really understand it at all. He says folding space is as much intuition as science. It's like making a wish, a cognitive leap on a human brain, a cognitive leap that only a human brain can perform. Did you like I don't know if I understood that. I understand the concept of holding space. It's just that I don't understand how it's like I don't understand how it's as much intuition as science and it's like making a wish.
You have to know exactly where you're going, and you have to take a guess to not jump somewhere where you're not supposed to go. So what it is, it's if think about the earth, if you go straight through the earth, you're more than likely going to hit water
Uh-huh.
on the opposite side. It's knowing that you have to take alternate routes through that fold to get where you need to go. Like it's not a straight fold. It's just you have to still curve around and go
So
around it.
so he's saying like it's not something that you can put in direct kind of computer coordinates for.
Yeah.
You have to navigate it very like fluidly, I guess is what
Yeah.
he's trying to say.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's
Right.
little
Okay.
obstacles. Yeah.
Okay. And then I thought it was funny that she referred it as jacking in.
Yeah, I know. I'm
I
like
kind of laughed
Matrix.
because I was just like I guess that's what they call it in everything. Like when you have cybernetics coming out of the back of your head, it's called you're being jacked in or jacking
Man,
in or
I,
something.
I gotta jack in.
Yeah, but I laughed because I think before she even said that, I wrote like the jacking into the Matrix, and then she says, "Can you jack in from whatever?" And I just remember being like, "Whoa, she calls it that? That's crazy." That might have been a writer's nod, going like, "Yeah, we know
Yeah.
what this looks like. Let's add this in and as like an Easter, not an Easter egg, but kind of like a little wink, you know." So again, we kind of go back to what you were talking about earlier. Was kind of my frustration with this scene was, when did we start giving a shit about Lewis? Like, when did we
Yeah.
start caring about Lewis? It seemed like the show was all of a sudden like, oh no, let's make him a likable character that like Salvor respects or something. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking like, what has he done to earn any respect at all? Like, he didn't volunteer to go on this mission. He was like dragged in because he happened to have some kind of credential. He's done nothing but like undercut any like
Yeah.
decent or smart move from the beginning of the show. You would think that Salvor would just absolutely hate him, like the audience does at this point. And
Yeah.
yet they're playing him off like he's this like respectable character that's I don't
Yeah,
I
he's not such a douchebag like we all think he is.
right.
Because my notes literally say, "Why is Lewis still alive?" Never mind. He explains how the ship works. Hate him again, and we before we go further, this is the
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
why I hate him more. We go back to Trantor, or is it Trantor?
Terminus.
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 We go back to Terminus, and there's a statue of him. So like, nope, I hate him again because of that
Oh,
damn statue.
was that I was sitting there going I actually wrote this as a note that's really funny. I wrote, that's a really bad statue of Harry. But apparently maybe it's of Lewis. I
I
guess
think
I
it's
guess I
yeah,
guess it is. Yeah, it would make sense because Harry died on the way there, so Lewis was like the founding person of the
yeah,
foundation. So I mean, I get it. Yeah, I remember thinking like, I was looking at the statue going, "Oh, dude, that looks terrible. That doesn't look like Harry at all." I guess it wasn't Harry, but
yeah. No, I just can't stand Lewis. I think Lewis is one of those characters that like he has no redeeming qualities.
right.
Even when he knows all about the ship, it's like, okay, cool, you know all about the ship, but you still have zero redeeming qualities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they could have like intuitive. She could have like intuitively figured that out or something along those lines. But yeah, I just didn't like how the show was passing him off like we're supposed to be concerned about what happens to Lewis here. Yeah, I remember wait, why do we care about Lewis? He sucks. That's what I wrote
Yeah.
down. And then yeah, we go back on Terminus. There's the person that was responsible for shooting down the Imperial warship, that guy with the ground cannon. That guy, he's
Yeah.
apparently leading the Anacrean troops at this point. One of the Foundation members comes up to warn him about something, and she's saying, "Hey, that's the vault."
Salvor's mom.
Salvor's mom. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering where I knew it from. So she goes to him to warn him that the vault is in fact expanding and it causes people to black out and they don't know anything about it. And I get the feeling he didn't really heed that warning too well. But it cuts away from that scene, a very quick scene where she's kind of warning them about that. We get the information that the vault is in fact still expanding. So
Yeah.
that's another wrinkle as well. We go back to the Maiden, kind of rocketing through here. I don't think there's a lot of subtext to unpack in this episode, really, a lot of stuff. But we go back to the Maiden, and there is the old guy is struggling, and he's decided to call it quits.
Yeah.
He's throwing in the towel. He says the mother calls to him. He goes down on one knee. Brother Day goes back to offer a helping hand, much like the person did to him earlier in the episode, and he declines and puts the other knee down, which, as Brian said earlier in the episode, is a sign of submission. And he can't really be helped unless he drags himself off of the path. Although it seemed like even after he went down, it seemed like they showed Cleon moving him off the path. So
Yeah. Cleon moves him off the path.
my understanding was that they weren't allowed to do that, right? They had to crawl themselves off the path if something like that happened. But
No,
Cleon
they could
maybe
help
doesn't care.
they could help him crawl.
Okay,
So it could have been that he helped him crawl to get over there. The
maybe.
Yeah, the one thing about the scene that was kind of weird was his stance. Like when he was walking on the dirt, he was just kind of like had like almost like a Jesus on the cross type stance where his like arms out and his legs were almost
Mm-hmm.
trying to hold on. So it was just a weird walk that he had.
Yeah, I can totally see the Jesus imagery stuff that you were talking about too, where he's kind of got his hands extended and it's kind of silhouetted against the sky that way and stuff. I don't know if they were going for that in the shot, but I got that vibe too now that you bring it up. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, he says the mother calls to me. He's gonna die. I also put again. I felt Brother Day seemed oddly empathetic. He seemed very kind of choked up at this and
Yeah,
kind of fascinated. I don't know if it was fascinated or if it was like he felt pity or sorrow for the guy. And he pretty much says like, what if there's no other life to the guy? And he says, I hope I'll see you again, which is a pretty cruel thing to say to a dying luminist. Is I remember
yeah,
thinking that. I remember thinking like, you really want the last thing this guy hears from you to be, what if there is no other life? Like as he's dying, I was like, wow, that's pretty harsh. Like just all of a sudden making question his faith at the last minute. But
yeah,
the guy, yeah, says, I hope I'll see you and you can tell me what you saw in the sacred pool, and then he dies essentially. I will say what I liked about the scene was it's setting up a thematic thread between Gale and Cleon where they're both kind of dealing with a crisis of faith where
yeah,
Brother Day seems to be dealing with this feeling of like, do I have a soul? Um, what happens when I die? I'm a clone. Do I have a soul and stuff like that? Whereas Gale is having this crisis of faith as to between the sleeper and her science and stuff as well. But
yeah.
he's a product of science, and he's having this crisis of faith as to whether or not this luminism stuff is real. And it kind of elaborates on that later in the episode. But I do like that it kind of sets up a parallel between Gale and Cleon as our
Yes.
two main protagonists.
I like that. I thought that was a really cool perspective. There's a couple of things I liked about, like, I made a lot of notes. One of the notes I had was Brother Day's first emotional connection, who isn't forced to play nice. Because since the Wonder had no idea who he wasn't respecting him or being nice to him because he's the Emperor. He was being nice to him because he's a generally nice person. So I think that's another thing that he probably never experienced, was somebody just not recognizing who he is
Hmm.
and just treating him like a regular person, like how you treat anybody else.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really unique way to show that he's never experienced these type of things before.
Yeah, I find it a little much. I kind of a stretch for me to believe that that guy didn't know who he was. I feel like he would have the most recognizable face in the galaxy. Like as far as like, I don't know. I wonder because I don't know if they explicitly say it or not, but I wonder if he knew or if he didn't, or if they're leaving that kind of ambiguous because it seems like he would be the most recognizable person in the whole galaxy. You know.
Yeah, you would think so, but at the same time, let's be honest, if Obama was in front of me, I probably wouldn't even recognize him.
Yeah, well, it also to your point too. The context of the situation plays into the fact too, where
Yeah.
the guy may think like, "Oh, that guy looks like Cleon," but he'd be like, "Cleon wouldn't be doing this spiral." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
like why would he
he'd be
risk his
like,
life?
"Why would he risk his life to do this like spiral thing as the Empire?" So yeah, I can get that too, where maybe he thought, "Oh, he looks familiar," but then he was like, "There's no way the Emperor would be doing this," you know? So it goes to he's again traveling through. He sees a bunch of skulls, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like he looks down at the salt crystal and it gives him strength. And again, it sets up this kind of complex relationship between he and Demerzel. They both obviously have um, a lot of feelings for each other because, like I said earlier in the episode, she seemed genuinely concerned for him
Yeah.
going through the walk and about how difficult it was, and that if he doesn't make it, it's going to be cause a lot of strife for the empire and stuff like that as well. And then in this one, in a really dark moment for him, after having just seen like somebody he bonded with die, he like looks down to the salt crystal and clutches it. And I remember thinking like, he's like Demerzel's with him or something. So there's a very deep kind of emotional connection between the two. But as we'll
Yeah.
find out later in the episode, there's also a very like a very disturbing kind of detached relationship that they have going on too. It's very complex
Oh
between the two of
yeah.
them. So he goes. Do we get into the sacred pool here, or is that later in the episode?
Nope. It's
Okay.
he goes, he gets to the sacred pool, and then it cuts to him having the council with the people.
Right, right. I will say I thought the way they shot the sacred pool was really cool. I thought it was
Yep.
gorgeous. I love that they kind of it was very underexposed.
Oh yeah.
And the water was so still that it was like a mirror image, and I like the framing of it. I just thought the photography of that whole sequence was really, really good. He stumbles into the water, um, and starts drinking feverishly from it after having trekked for 175 miles, and he looks like absolute shit. He looks like he's been beaten and
Yeah.
kind of bruised and burnt and all that kind of stuff. So he drinks from it, and then we cut to for the Zephyrs. The luminous Zephyrs are in front of him. They're kind of religious leaders,
Yeah.
and he recounts a vision that he had
Yep.
of spinning
The
salt. The salt in the water started spinning around him, and then it went above him, and it manifested in the form of this three-petaled flower.
yep.
And then they kind of elaborate the fact that three-petaled flowers used to be they have a lot of religious significance to the mother, and that they died out some thousands of years ago. I want to say like thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of years ago. So they
Yeah.
take it as like a good omen. And they say, specifically, I wrote down too, they say three elements created out of one. And he says, like my brothers and I. So he's kind of drawing parallels between their religion with the
Yeah.
mother and him and his brothers, trying to create that link and bond between the two things.
Yeah. Like with that one, I had a lot of unique things. Like one of them is water is a normally a sign of baptism. The very religious overtures, the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really a lot of parallels to religion, Christianity. Um, I know going back to this well, especially me, the Roman Empire,
Yeah.
where Christianity kind of infiltrated and became part of the emperors. Things
Mm-hmm.
was so that led to the popes, and he's kind of leading into the Middle Ages, which is what is going to happen. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a unique like way that they're forecasting the downfall of society, and they're using religion as one of the tools to do it, and just a lot of religious symbolism. And when they explain like what the was it it's the birth root, right? Or is the
Birth root
bit
sounds right to me. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's what it is.
Yeah, the birth root flower, the triple moon, the flower died off, and it's the triples, the triples, the
Mm-hmm.
triples. So it's really unique idea of the Trinity, the holy.
He recounts that that's what he
Yeah.
saw. They say this was a holy event, and then they straight up give Zephyr Halima, because she doesn't become Proxima. They Zephyr Halima. They straight up give her some side eye and say like anybody who thinks that this person isn't
Yeah, it doesn't have a
like a
soul.
holy person is actually sinning under the luminism. And they're pretty much just like, get off his back. He made it here. Like, you have to back off now. And they say it so on the nose that I kind of roll my eyes, where they're like, no other, they say, I think they say, quote, from this day forth, no other Zephyr will stand in your way. And I remember thinking like, it's so on the nose. And I was like Zephyrs as a whole weren't standing in his way. It was just Halima. That I thought that line was like, okay, like we get it. like,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure.
we kick back. Did you have anything else for that scene, or you want to kick back to Gale here?
My Gale notes are very simple, very to the point. Gale is too inconsistent.
Yes. Yeah. Her as a character, and it's not even I think Lula Bell does a really good job with her. It just seems
Yeah,
like her character is so strangely written, and like you said, inconsistent, and her motivations feel strange to me. She's been kind of my least favorite arc, and it's weird because she was one of my favorites in the first couple
yeah,
episodes with the Synax and all that kind of stuff. I really wanted to know what was going on with her, but I've kind of soured on that storyline a lot. Um, right before we kick back, I do want to say the sequence where they show the flower and stuff was really cool. Like where the stuff's spinning around and it's floating in the air and it's creating
oh
the flower
yeah.
above him, and and I thought that sequence was really
It's
cool.
kind of like your shirt.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It does kind of look like this is the birth root, guys. I wore the
Yep.
birth root today for the pod. For those of you watching on video, I think I wrote, Gail, WTF are you doing? She doesn't believe in the foundation anymore? Question mark. Like I didn't. So kind of getting ahead of myself, but she kills. I think she destroys the heating transfer system or something, so that it ensures that the ship is going to overheat in this debris field and she's going to be burned alive. Is that right?
Yeah, it's that she's gonna die in the heat because they can't transfer it out anymore, because all she did was just hit a control panel, and all of a sudden that breaks everything.
Mm-hmm. Right, on a ship, that control panel just kills everything. There's no backup systems on the Raven or anything
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
It's only voice controlled by everything else. Only specific voices can control it, but you just take out one panel.
Yeah, that one
Heaven
panel is
forbid.
very important. Don't mess with that panel, guys. It's a very important panel. So she tells Harry, "Tell me everything. I don't want any more secrets. Tell me all this stuff." And he says, "I've crunched the numbers. If I tell you, it's going to destroy the second foundation." And she says, "Well, I don't care. Tell me everything, or I'm going to kill myself." And he says, "What?" And then she breaks the control panel and realizes that she's going to boil alive. I'm being kind of facetious in how I'm
Yeah.
explaining this, but that's how I took it. I was sitting there going like, "Wait, what?" Like does she not believe that he's crunched the numbers and said like, hey, if you can't know this certain information, it's because it's going to destroy the last chance we have at something you've feverishly believed in a couple episodes ago, like something you vehemently would have given your life for a couple episodes ago. And then
Yeah.
she's like, I don't care, I want to go home, and destroys the control panel. Did you read
Yeah.
that another way? I don't know. I just remember kind of like going, what? Why is she? What is she doing? Like, I don't know.
This was the scene that like made me go, I wish they killed her off
Yeah.
because she she's so inconsistent with her actions, with her reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Like you lost everything. There's nothing left. You've been asleep for 34 years. And she gets into the cryopod. She says, take me back to Synax.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, take 134 years or 194 years. So like some ridiculous amount of years, like, okay, let's go. I'm like, by that time, everybody you knew is dead. You don't know anybody
Not
here.
only that, but more importantly, because she crunched the numbers on Synax is
Yeah.
pretty much underwater at this point, right?
Yeah.
Between like, so what, this will be like 200 years from since she left, and she said, "Oh, they were pretty much in the last throes of civilization to begin with." So yeah. We're gonna talk about that when we get to that point where she says that. But yeah, that was another thing where I was just kind of like, wait, what is the logic here? Where she's like again, like she's supposed to be this
Yeah.
really smart character, and I remember thinking like, what is her rationale here? Maybe I'm too stupid and I don't see her 4D chess going on or something. But I was just sitting there going like, I don't understand what her rationale is here. Yeah, so she pretty much makes Harry open the thing for her because if not, she's gonna boil to death. She gets in the cryopod. She first of all, key thing is she pulls the knife out, so the knife's gonna have some kind of purpose in
Yep.
future episodes. I don't know if that's what his my thing was when she first put the knife in was that that's where his consciousness was coming from was the knife. So that's the only thing that makes sense to me. So it seems like she may have taken Harry with her to Synax because I think the knife was what was allowing him to download into the Raven. Maybe there's a copy of him still in the Raven, but I think that knife allows her to access him if she needs him in some capacity.
Yeah.
But yeah, she says, I'm going to go to Synax. They say, well, Synax is going to take 138 years to get there in a cryopod. And she goes, confirm. And then she pretty much gets enveloped in the gel, reading her prime numbers. And then she shoots off to Synax. I'm assuming we're going to see in another giant time jump. We'll see Gale. It comes back to one of the challenges of the show that they said was there's so many giant time jumps and you don't get to stay with certain characters through those time jumps, and
Yeah.
this seems like a way for them to shoehorn, let's have one persistent character somehow available at all these different time frames,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It seems like this is the writer's way of saying, well, we want to have a character that the audience recognizes there in 138 years because everyone else is going to be dead by natural causes, so let's have Gale kind of be trekking throughout the foundation and she's going to kind of be our POV character as we go through all this. It seems like that's what they're setting her up as to me.
Yeah, because it kind of makes sense that after they left whatever the ship was that took them to Terminus, that
Mm-hmm.
they established enough connections with some of like the characters because we saw Lewis on there. We saw enough characters to where they jump forward the 34 years. That we go like, okay, I remember them. I remember them. Okay, they aged them pretty good. So they did give us like that. So yeah, I do
Mm-hmm.
see some of that with the time jumps, like using Gale as the central focal point.
Yeah. Um, and then it goes to we're back on the Maiden, right? So we're seeing everyone showering Cleon with praise. On
Yeah.
the way back to his ship, he stops and has a kind of passive aggressive tense standoff. Yeah, he puts on a show, essentially saying, "Thank you, Proxima Halima or Zephyr Halima. I wouldn't have done this without you." And then she
Yeah.
bows to him, knowing that she's been defeated. She's been beat. Um, I they're it's a kind of a shame too, with that character because I thought their dynamic was really interesting. It was one of my favorite parts of the season was her character, specifically Zephyr
Yeah.
Halima. I thought the actress did such a fantastic job with her. She was so commanding on the screen. And her kind of dynamic with Cleon was really interesting as well.
Yeah.
It goes from, let's see, there to uh, Demerzel. So there's probably the strongest scene, in my opinion, of the episode. Right? Would you say so as well? The scene with Demerzel and Halima.
that scene was really good.
Yeah.
I really liked that. One of the things I liked about this was like everybody else was bowing to Cleon ahead of time, and then when he gets to her, they talk, they have their thing, and then she finally like realizes like, okay, we're done. I lost. Then she bows to him and says triple blessings.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really unique that it did it after the fact.
Hmm. Yeah, and Demerzel goes in to
Yep.
speak with Halima,
Yeah.
and there's go
Before
ahead.
we go, what was your initial thoughts of like why were they meeting? What went through your head?
Okay, so I think we might have spoken this on a past episode. My initial hunch was um that Halima was working with Demerzel. So I thought Demerzel was kind of there to maybe give some information about something because we always knew that there was kind of a shaky relationship between the Cleons and Demerzel, and
Yeah.
there's something going on underneath the surface as far as her allegiances. And then we also had her bowing before Cleon in one of the past episodes, which kind of
Yo,
threw into question her allegiance as well.
Demerzel used to be a Zelfer
A
or
Zephyr for
a Zephyr.
Luminous.
Yeah,
What makes you say that?
because when she asked for the salt crystals, because remember, they show something, they always show something for a specific reason. So when she gives Cleon or Brother Day the salt crystal, the specific bracelet that I was on is the same bracelet that Halima takes off when she's talking to Demerzel.
Oh, cool. So you think that that bracelet is kind of a signifier of a Zephyr, and that she was probably a Zephyr way long ago.
Yeah,
Dang, that's crazy. So they do drop the knowledge for if we're getting ahead there, they do drop the knowledge that Demerzel's 11,000 years old. Well, no, she's not 11,000 years old. It's 11,000 years ago that she did the spiral. She could
yeah,
have existed thousands of years before that. Who knows? Like, who knows how old she is, honestly. But she did the spiral 11,000 years ago, which makes Halima perks her interest and says, "Oh, you must be an android. You're one of the last. There were rumors that you were one of the last intelligent robots." And then the realization comes, why are you willfully giving me this information? At which point, I do like that they let Halima put it together. She's a good enough,
yeah.
smart enough character where it feels like she would be able to see the writing on the wall and not just be taken aback by it or taken surprise for it. So I feel like it was a pretty decent send off for her as a character. But she realizes, oh, Demerzel's here to kill me. And then they have a heart to heart, essentially, about her status as an android and whether or not she has a soul. Did you find anything really interesting about that interaction?
Yeah, what these are my notes on the scene, like from beginning to end. Like I
Mm-hmm.
made notes. Demerzel wants out. What was the event that caused it? She revealed her true nature to Hem Emila, Emila
Halima.
needs to Halima
Mm-hmm.
needs to kill her because in order to do so, change his stance on what makes a soul when her life was put on the line. So
Right.
Halima, as soon as her life was put on the line, she quickly changes her stance of what is a soul. Because
Right.
according to her, the androids never had souls.
Yeah, I wrote that too. I thought that was interesting. We both kind of had that same thought, which is I asked the question, do you think she really believes that Demerzel has a soul after having that heart to heart with her and seeing like the compassion in her eyes or whatever she says? Or do you
Yeah.
think that she was just making a plea to try to live? They kind of leave it ambiguous as to what her true beliefs are, but yeah, it calls into question she seems to change her stance on the whole like you don't have a soul because you weren't reincarnated thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wondered that. I was like, do you think she really believes Halima has a soul, or do you think that she was just kind of making a plea out of desperation because she knew her life was about to end?
I think she was making a plea out of desperation because she knew her life was going to end. Because she knew that she was always protected, that she could speak out against Brother Day because she
Hmm.
had the power of the people to protect her and guide her and all that stuff. And when she realized that she lost it,
Yeah.
she no one's going to care that she dies. Like she realizes that her life is over, her protection is over. She went up against the Empire and failed miserably, and she
Hmm.
realizes this is the consequences for doing that.
Yeah, the only and I probably lean that way too, that's the case. The only thing I would push back on is if she was kind of pleading for her life afterwards, she seemed like she just accepted it and she said, "How is this going to happen?" it wasn't like a kind of feverish play for like, let me try to run away or let me try to get away from this.
Yeah.
She seemed like she just kind of accepted that it was going to happen, because she said, how does this happen? And that's when Demerzel says, it's already been done. I've secreted a poison out of my skin or something. And she just kind of
Yep.
like sat there. So it's weird, because I want to say, I want to agree with you and say, yeah, it seems like she was making a kind of a desperate plea to change her mind at the end of her life. But at the same time, she seemed like she was aware of the writing on the wall and that there's no way she was leaving that room.
Yeah.
And it seems like if that's the case, you would probably speak your truth in that moment, you know. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm kind of conflicted about it.
Like I could see that it was her last ditch effort to try to like save herself, and then when she realized that there's no more there's nothing else
It
that she
didn't
could
work.
do. Yeah,
Yeah. Do you think that Halim is dead?
I think so.
I think so too. But I could totally see. We did have some issues about Demerzel and her allegiance to the crown before. I can definitely see maybe that not being the case.
Yeah.
And I can see a world where, I've watched too many TV shows to know that if you don't see someone die, there's a chance that they're not dead. You know what I mean? Like, unless you
Yeah.
see them actually die. So, but I do feel like there was a sense of finality to the scene, and she probably is gone.
One of my major notes from there is killing her seems like he is repeating Brother Dust's mistake by killing those who disagree with him. Like when Thespin and Anacrin, when he blew those planets up as revenge, I think she saw that he's just gonna always keep repeating himself no matter what. That whoever disagrees with him or whoever has like a differing opinion would always he'll always choose violence over them. And we've seen it where there's a chance to give mercy when they've been defeated. He's always gone above and beyond to humiliate them.
Yeah.
So I think that's very telling that like this scene might foreshadow that this is not the first time that she's done this, that she's had to do this multiple times because anyone who disagrees with him, she's the one that has to kill him.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too, because I wanted to touch on that too earlier in the in we were talking about how he was helping the Wanderer, and it seemed like
Yeah.
maybe he's gaining some humility, maybe he's gaining some reverence for the common man and common people or something like that, and this action doesn't seem to validate that at all. He almost seems kind of, and then in the dinner scene later on that we'll get to, he seems kind of indifferent about it. He seems kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, this is what's going to happen anyway, and kind of like on a power trip. So it doesn't seem like that kind of changed him at all for the better. The other thing too is you brought up a really good point about, it seems like he's repeating the same stuff from Dusk and the earlier Cleons as well.
Yeah.
There was a scene early, I think it was in season episode 1 or episode 2, right after the Anacreon and Thespis attack. I think it was episode 2, where this brother Day was brother Dawn, and Demerzel's holding his hand as he's looking at the hanged victims, and she says something along the lines of, he says, "Do we always do this?" And she says, "Yeah, more often than not. Like, this is what you do." And
Oh.
she says that essentially. So that does kind of ring back to what you were talking about, where it seems like Demerzel seeing him just kind of repeat the same things over and over again, and it seems like it's just in his nature that he's going to do this. And she's probably thinking, after having gone through the spiral, one of the most like intense and insane spiritual journeys that a person can go through in the galaxy, you still punch down and you still take out people
Yeah.
weaker than you, and you have no kind of reverence or yeah, you have no kind of reverence for the common man at all. So that's a really good point, because I think that that's probably what's going on in Demerzel's head, is she's saying you're repeating the same stuff.
Yeah.
Hugo did it. So we're back on Invictus. Hugo got the beacon away,
Yep.
and the Thespins are shooting at the Invictus to try to stop it from jumping. I don't know what they're doing necessarily, but I don't really understand what the Thespins are like, how they're hampering anything. Star Wars says that she wants to jack in essentially
Yep.
to the Matrix. She wants to have. She says, "Hey, if you haven't had a surgical like hole put in your head to steer these ships, can you do it just as a normal person?" And he said, "Yeah, but like you'll die like pretty quickly." And she goes, "Well, will I live long enough to be able to, like Brian said earlier in the episode, like
Uh,
steer the ship with my intuition and my mind?" And he says, "Probably not, but we'll see." try it out here. And again, we get waterworks from Lewis, and it's this whole thing where I'm like, why am I caring about Lewis again?
Yeah, and then
Why do we really give a shit about
yeah,
Lewis? Then Farah
Farah.
and Rowan burst through the door. They shoot Lewis. I'm assuming he's dead. Thank
Yep.
God.
I
Let's
know
get
it
a
took long enough.
let's take a moment of silence and clap. Lewis
He's
Lewis's
dead.
life ended. Um, so Lewis died, and they're in a firefight, and then the ship starts jumping. The ship jumps. Right.
Yep.
That's where we end with Salvor. Is they're not in any kind of protective orb or bubble or anything, and the ship has jumped. So what leads me to believe, and maybe we'll get to this in predictions, but yeah, the ship jumps, and I'll just leave it for predictions there.
Yeah.
Um, then we get the scene that you're referring to. I think we go right back to the Maiden, and it's a dinner table scene between
Yes.
Demerzel and Cleon. A really, really solid scene. I really
I
like this scene.
what I like about it is that it's something that we keep touching upon. It's the symbolism of the surroundings, the symbolism of the settings. And you just went from a barren planet to him by himself with a gigantic dinner table just full of food,
Hmm.
all for one person.
Yeah, yeah. It highlights again.
Yeah.
It highlights again that like we've been hammering this in, and I think that's what the show's going for. Is they're visually showing that Cleon's not going to change, right? Because I
Yeah.
think I think Demerzel and the audience like us, we had the hope that having gone through this really traumatic religious trek and this journey, and kind of being helped by the common man like he was, and he almost died if it wasn't for the help of that person, that maybe he would have a perspective shift and he would think, wow, like have some more humility. And what they show visually, like you said, with that long table and all the food on it, that he's not gonna eat at all. You know what I mean? um,
Yeah.
is is that nothing's changed. He's back there and he's like, I won. I totally duped him. And now we can go back to Trantor, and you can almost see in Demerzel's eyes the realization that just like there's nothing that's going to change this. There's nothing that's
Yeah.
going to change these people. So that'll probably go into predictions as well, as far as that's concerned. But she says, she raises suspicion very passive aggressively that she doesn't think he had a religious event, and
Yeah.
we're shown a flashback that confirms this as well. But it turns out that the swirling salt that we saw earlier in the vision was something that the guy on the path told him about. He
Yep.
said, "Oh, I saw a person that they said that the salt swirled around him," and he went, "Oh, mental note." And then he apparently saw a flower on Demerzel's desk that was
Yep.
the three petaled flower. That she was like a religious token for her, and that's what he described seeing in the salt. And it turns out that she was the only one that could have had that flower because she was around at the time that the flower still existed, because she's 11,000, at least 11,000 years old.
Yep.
So she says, she pretty much says, I don't think you've had a vision. And he goes, well, I did. And then she said, I'm so glad you had that holy vision, because I wouldn't wish that emptiness of not having a vision on anyone.
Yeah.
And that kind of hits him in the heart there, because he realizes that I think he's questioning, wow, I probably don't have a soul. All these people that do have a soul have seen this vision, and I haven't. So maybe I'm a soulless creature, I guess. And he's starting to kind of question his identity there.
Yeah. And the scene where they do that, it's so beautiful because like they distort the peaceful serenity of the womb, and with him in the water, like the waves, it's very subtle. You can see that he's disturbing the essence, he's disturbing the
Hmm.
peace. And it was a really great way that they framed it, like he never had the vision.
Yeah, no
Because
score too.
yeah.
It was just an empty. You just get the sound effects of the like echoing cave,
Yeah.
and it's just like there's nothing here. There's nothing. He's just looking around like, and we see something, and there's just nothing there. So yeah, I thought the filmmaking there was really on point. And I think that's where it ends, right? It ends with him in the, oh no, I'm sorry, it ends with him on a jump ship. So he's going on a jump ship, and he's echoing back what Demerzel
Yeah.
told him, which is, I wouldn't wish that emptiness upon anyone. And that's when we see the vision of the cave, and him not getting any kind of vision. I guess,
Yeah.
and him questioning whether he has a soul or not. But again, I think the most powerful thing about the episode, in my opinion, was the parallels. So the things I got from this episode were the parallels between Gale and Cleon, as far as the faith and science juxtaposition about kind of questioning their existence
Yeah.
around those concepts. And the other thing too was the really complicated relationship between he and Demerzel, where it's like at one point you can feel the love they have for each other, and they feel very like close. And
Yeah.
in his
Attached.
moment of darkness, he's like looking to the Demerzel crystal and giving him strength, and she's very like concerned for his well-being. And then at the same time, he just orders her to kill someone that he knows that she has like a religious reverence for,
Yeah.
as a show of fealty to him or something. And it's like it's this really like bipolar relationship that they have. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and hit into our predictions here. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about prediction wise is I think Exo is what Salvor said. I think it has something to do with aliens. I think that's the more interesting thing. Uh, for going forward, I think they were. So I think the Invictus was bouncing around to random coordinates in the galaxy, and one of those coordinates they happened upon something that was that either killed them uh, or caused them to kind of mentally lose their minds or something. And I think we're gonna kind of reveal that as the show goes on potentially. But I think
Yeah.
that's probably what the EXO was referring to. I doubt it was just second in command officer mutiny kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think it's extraterrestrials.
Hmm.
I think the Invictus jumps time.
Okay, so you think the Invictus is like it's a time machine, or it's like it's jumping to different time coordinates?
Yeah, I think like it's so old, it's been doing it for so long. I think it's involved to the point where it's just jumping through time and space.
Possibly. I mean that kind of feeds in. That's possible because that kind of feeds in with what I was talking about Gale, where you have a persistent character across the big time
Yeah.
jumps that they're doing. So if the Invictus does do that, then it conveniently says, "Hey, let's have Salvor here in 138 years. Let's have Salvor here in 200 years." Where generally they maybe wouldn't. So yeah, that kind of fits that too, where that keeps the character alive even though they do these crazy time jumps.
But outside of that, I think there's more ramification. I think Demerzel betrays the Cleons. I don't know when or how, but I do believe that she is gonna betray him because I think their trust is fractured for so like since he keeps making the same mistakes, he keeps having the same actions in different
Hmm.
settings that it is gonna break and it is gonna cause them to that relationship to fracture to the point where there's no return.
Yeah, I think they're kind of setting that up. There's definitely a fractured relationship between her and the Cleons, and kind of a tortured history between the two as well, which is going to make for a really interesting conflict because of their complicated relationship that I went into earlier. Um, we didn't get anything from Brother Dawn in this episode at all, so he's probably going to be featured heavily in the next one.
Yep.
And we did make predictions in the last episode, but I can reiterate that here. I do think now that Brother Day's made this out, I think Brother Dawn's going to die probably in the next episode, in my
I think
opinion.
so too. Yeah.
Because I think that his girlfriend Azora is going to it's going to be revealed that she's been working with Brother Dusk, and Brother Dusk is going to get rid of the problem child that seems to be having a lot of genetic differences from the Cleon dynasty, and we'll get to see that little test tube baby pop out
Oh
of
yeah.
Brother Dawn. I think that's going to happen. Do you have any other predictions for the rest of the episodes here?
Well, considering that the next episode's name is called The First Crisis, I really do think that all hell's going to break loose.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's going to be on the religious front or the political front. But considering where everything's coming from, I think it's going to be the political front.
Yeah, it seems like the religious front's been kind of stemmed, and it makes, once that kind of problem has been stemmed, you're like, okay, well, they referenced very early on in the season that there was a break with religion and that insurrectionists were going to be causing something. So
The insurrectionists.
we're probably going to get something from the insurrectionists that we haven't been really getting in the last couple episodes that is going to cause this crisis on Trantor. I would think. So I think that's probably a safe bet too. Um, I don't have any other real predictions that I can think of here. We've got this was episode 8. We've got 2 more episodes.
Yep.
So we're almost towards the end of the season here. There is going to be a season 2. But yeah, we're coming down to the pike here. We will try to get these episodes out the day of the episode dropping. So this you guys should probably be watching this on Friday when the new episode has already dropped.
Yes.
And then next week we should be able to have them out the same day as well. Did you have anything that you wanted to promo? Anything that you're working on? Any articles?
Not right now. Not working on really anything. Highly recommend just going to the movies. There's a lot of good movies out there. Just go see it. That's the only thing I got to recommend.
Yeah, for this audience, guys, go see Dune. If you haven't seen Dune, definitely go see Dune. It's definitely worth it to see it on a screen in IMAX as well. Yep. I have a watch party on Monday. Right now, I think it's a tie between Rat Race and Dumb and Dumber right now in the first lead. We've got some road trip movies that we're doing. So if you guys want to watch that movie with us live, we're going to be doing that Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can go to youtube.com/thedistract to subscribe so you're notified when we go live and watch that with us there. I also just did a review on thedismedia.com, which should be linked in the description below, for Last Night in Soho, which I thought was really good. So you guys can check that review out. Yep. And that's pretty much it for me. But as always, guys, respect and enjoy the peace.
Triple blessings.
Triple blessings to you all, and may the light never dim. We will see you same time next week.
See you later. Thank you.